y'all, and welcome to the very first episode of Sweet Tea and Crime. I'm your host, Josie, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. I have a deep rooted love for all things crime, and I can't wait to share the true crime stories that I find with all of you. If you like murder and mystery with a sprinkle of sarcasm, then you have found your home, my friend. Grab a glass of sweet tea, sit on down, and let's talk about this case. In this debut episode, we're going to dive into a story that's sure to captivate and intrigue you. So get comfortable and let's get started on this exciting journey together. And today we're going to be talking about Alonzo Robinson. He was also known as James Coyner. He was an American grave robber, murderer, cannibal, and suspected serial killer. Alonzo was born in 1895 in Cleveland, Mississippi. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Cleveland to start. Cleveland is in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, located on Highway 61, which is known as the Blues Highway. Cleveland is named after President Grover Cleveland, and it is the home of the Grammy Museum. Alonzo was born to an extremely poor family, which is pretty common in that area. Honestly, like the vast majority of Mississippi lives in poverty, even to this day. Alonzo was said to have fought in World War I in the Army Engineer Corps. By the time Alonzo was 23, he was sending crazy, obscene letters to women. He was eventually arrested and went to jail for the letters. He did end up sustaining a non-fatal gunshot by the husband of one of the women that he was sending the letters to. The husband was outraged by the happenings in those letters. Alonzo ended up escaping prison and fled to Michigan, where he changed his name to James Coyner. He kind of fell off the face of the planet for about 8 years, where we don't really know what he was doing during that time. We can really only kind of speculate. Alonzo was prone to digging up graves of women and robbing them. The fella clearly had hella issues with women. In 1927, Alonzo was caught robbing the grave of Grace C. in Indiana and was sentenced to serve 1 to 10 years in Indiana prison. He served 7 of those years. While he was in prison in Indiana, the people that were living in the house that he previously owned in Ferndale, Michigan, went up into the attic, not thinking anything of it, where they found a trunk. And it was actually said to be a child of the family that found the trunk. In the trunk, they found 4 skulls wrapped in newspaper, Alonzo's army uniform, blood-matted hair, and the names and addresses of women in Detroit. Now, these were women that were upper society white women. Alonzo was a man of color, and this was during the times where news outlets were highly racist and didn't always depict complete truths. So it was kind of hard to depend on accurate information from them. With the trunk, they found a letter to Alonzo's sister, which is where they got his name from. I do want to note that there was a second trunk that was sent to his sister, and it did include a letter that said, "Get rid of this. It can be used as evidence to do me in." It was very vague as to what he was talking about in the letter. We can really only guess on that. When the family and the authorities looked up his name, they found out he was in prison. So the authorities began to question Alonzo about those skulls that were in the trunk. He did admit to them that he robs graves and told them that the skulls were from the grave robins. Authorities were unable to identify who the skulls were, so they had no idea who the skulls belonged to. In June of 1934, Alonzo was paroled. He went back to Cleveland and moved in with his mama. That's where he picked up his nasty habit of sending obscene letters to women again. If you're shaking your head right now, you are not alone. Authorities ended up dropping the skull case because they didn't feel like they had sufficient evidence. Well, on December 9th, 1934, just outside of Cleveland, Mr. and Miss Turner were found bludgeoned to death in their home. Miss Turner was pregnant. They had a 6-year-old boy who was hit in the head during the attack, and a baby in the crib who was unharmed. The 6-year-old boy was the only witness to the crime. He told authorities that all he knew was that it was a big man. That was all he could recall, was a big man. Meanwhile, authorities arrested a hitchhiker in Shreveport, Louisiana, and sent him to jail. They put some pieces together and said, well, he's a hitchhiker, he's a big man, yada, yada, yada. So they tried to pin the Turner murders on him. He was a bit unstable, so when they questioned him, he said, well, I guess I killed somebody, I don't know. And during that time, there was a postmaster who had picked up on the obscene letters being mailed to women in Indianapolis. And so he started tracing the letters to see where they were coming from. He did find out that the letters were coming from this post office in Mississippi. So the postmaster and the authorities made a trip down to Mississippi and decided to stake out the post offices where the letters were coming from. While they were waiting one day, Alonzo walks in and he's picking up his mail that had come from Indianapolis, and they started thinking like, this must be the man. So they tried to stop him. He pulls out a gun, but he quickly realized like he was outnumbered, he was outgunned, so he ends up just like surrendering his gun to them, and they take him into custody. They emptied out Alonzo's pockets, and what did they find? They found Mr. Turner's watch, freaking human flesh, and other obscene letters that he was planning to mail that day. When they asked him about the human flesh, he said that he liked the way human flesh felt. How sickening. When authorities searched his house in Cleveland, they found salted and cured flesh and what appeared to be teeth marks on it. Gross. So that's really when they started to suspect that he was the one who killed the Turners. And, not to mention, they found the gun that was used on the Turners. So when authorities in Michigan found out about this, they informed the Mississippi authorities that they were looking into him about the skulls that were in the trunk that they found. When they started questioning him about the skulls, he said, I could tell you a lot of things you would like to know, a lot of things about murders and murderers, but I will die first. And that's all he had to say. Well, January 18th, 1935 rolls around, and he is completely clammed up. He is not talking to anybody. He wouldn't talk about any of the allegations, nothing. He is just silenced. So the authorities had had enough. They were tired of his crap. So they were like, this is what we're going to do. They went and arrested his 74-year-old mother and told him that she was going to stay in jail until he confessed. Pretty unethical, but it did get him to talking. So he agreed to tell them what they wanted to know, if they would just agree to let her go. He confessed, saying that he had dug up the woman's skulls at the graveyard because he just wanted the bones. When he was asked about the Turners, he told them that he had an impulse to kill. He went to the Turners with a hatchet and a gun. The Turners were at home, minding their own dang business. Mr. Turner was sitting reading the newspaper. Alonzo came in, hit Mr. Turner in the head first, which is when Miss Turner walks in while he was injuring Mr. Turner. So Alonzo stopped what he was doing and went and hit her over and over and over in the head until she was dead. That is awful. Can you imagine walking in and seeing this massive man beating on your husband? That had to be terrifying, especially knowing your kids are in the house. Insanity. So he goes back to Mr. Turner and shot him just to be sure, as he says. He then proceeded to carve the skin off of Miss Turner, saying that he just wanted to see how it felt. He did also admit to biting the flesh. Crazy. So, anyway, when he was in custody, authorities would not tell anybody where they took Alonzo because there was this mob that had gathered and they were getting ready to hurt him. And they were outraged. So they called in 200 National Guards to be there during the trial to protect Alonzo. On February the 4th, he was tried and indicted. On the exact same day, he was sentenced to death by hanging. There were 7 witnesses for the trial. Absolutely no defense. None. Zero, zilch. The district attorney showed the jury the flesh of Miss Turner. I personally am thinking that's probably what made it so quick of a decision because it only took them 5 minutes to find him guilty. He was later killed in Bolivar County Jail. That is a crazy story. Just as an ending note, Alonzo is the suspected assailant known as the Toledo Clubber. The skulls in the attic are actually believed to be the skulls of the Toledo Clubber's victims. So that might be a story that we look into at a later date and kind of dive into that and see if we can piece it together as well. That was a wild story. This is definitely not the Hallmark Channel. I do want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Sweet Tea and Crime. I hope you enjoyed our dive in today's case. Do you have a case that you would like for me to look into? Feel free to email me at sweetteaandcrime1, that's the number 1, at gmail.com. Don't forget to grab another glass of sweet tea and join me next time for more intriguing stories. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring. I'm your host, Josie. Be good and stay safe.